Have you ever stood at a crossroads in your life, utterly paralyzed by the deafening silence of the unknown? A moment where the path forward is shrouded in mist, and every fiber of your being screams, "What do I do now?" If you have ever felt this profound uncertainty, this soul-deep confusion that makes you question everything, then you have arrived at a sacred threshold. This is not a moment of failure. It is a divine summons from your higher self, an invitation to a deeper awakening. Understand that this feeling of being lost is a sign that your soul is ready to shed an old skin and step into a more authentic reality. If this message resonates with the very core of your being, let the universe know by liking this video, subscribing for more guidance on your path, and sharing your journey in the comments below. Affirm your experience by writing, "I am ready," or 777 to connect with the frequency of transformation that has brought you here. When you are confronted by the vast, open expanse of uncertainty, when the future you meticulously planned dissolves into a formless void, what is the first thing your mind does? It panics. It launches a frantic, desperate search for answers, for any semblance of control. Your mind begins to generate an internal storm, a cacophony of noise designed to drown out the silence you so deeply fear. It floods your consciousness with an endless torrent of thoughts, a relentless stream of analyses, a parade of worst-case scenarios, and 1,001 distractions. This mental noise becomes a fortress, a shield you erect against the discomfort of not knowing. It is a flood of words and images, a frantic attempt to fill the emptiness, to build a bridge of logic over a chasm of feeling. In this rush of internal dialogue, in this whirlwind of anxieties and projections, it becomes almost impossible to remember the most profound truth, that the silence you fear so much is not a lack. It is not an abyss of meaninglessness, and it is certainly not your enemy. It is, in fact, the most sacred and authentic space you can enter, a divine sanctuary, where the unvarnished truth about who you are, what you desire, and where you are destined to go can finally emerge from the depths. The great psychoanalyst Carl Jung emphasized this very point with piercing clarity. He taught that modern man is terrified of silence, not because it is empty, but because it is profoundly full. It is full of you. Silence forces you to confront yourself, to meet the person you are beneath the social masks, the conditioned beliefs, and the carefully constructed identities. When the outside world finally stops offering its pre-packaged answers, when the distractions of your daily life cease to hold your attention, silence transforms into a perfect mirror. It is a mirror that reflects your deepest, most hidden desires, the ones you have buried under layers of practicality and compromise. It reflects the forgotten dreams of your youth, the passions your soul has been yearning to express. And, most importantly, it reflects your shadow, the fears, the wounds, and the aspects of yourself you have long disowned. In the stillness, there is nowhere left to run. There is no escape, because there is nowhere to hide. Only you remain, in your raw and magnificent entirety. It is just you and your true self, with all of its beautiful chaos and its infinite, untapped potential. In this sacred silence, your subconscious mind, the vast and wise reservoir of your being, finally begins to speak. It does not speak in the loud, demanding language of your conscious mind. It whispers in the language of symbols, feelings, and archetypes. The archetypes, those universal patterns of human experience that reside in the collective unconscious, begin to stir within you. You might feel the courage of the warrior, the wisdom of the sage, or the nurturing spirit of the mother rising to the surface, offering you their unique strengths to navigate your current challenges. Old patterns, the deeply ingrained habits and beliefs you inherited from your family and culture, rise to the surface not to haunt you, but to be seen, understood, and lovingly released. These symbols and patterns are not random noise. They are the divine guidance system of your soul, attempting to guide you, to show you the way forward. Yet, so many of us cannot withstand this profound confrontation. The intensity of this inner meeting is too much to bear, and so, almost immediately, we reach for another distraction. We grab our phones, we turn on the television, We immerse ourselves in work. We do anything and everything to drown out this unsettling calm. We choose the familiar noise over the transformative silence. However, it is a universal law that real change, true insight, and a genuine understanding of your life's purpose can only come when you dare to enter the silence instead of constantly filling it with noise. This is not about doing nothing in a passive or lazy sense. It is about learning the art of mindful presence. It is about being with yourself, fully and completely, without the compulsive need to immediately react, to plan, to analyze, or to escape. The emptiness you feel is not a vacuum that you must frantically fill with more activities, more goals, or more information. You must understand this, that emptiness is a creative space. It is a womb, infinite and fertile, pregnant with all the possibilities you have yet to imagine. It is the blank canvas upon which your soul can finally paint its masterpiece. When you allow yourself to rest in this silence, a new kind of perception begins to awaken. Intuitive answers, those deep knowings that bypass the logical mind, start to bubble up from within. Symbols and visions, rich with personal meaning, will begin to appear in your dreams and waking moments, guiding you toward a path of authentic growth and soul-aligned transformation. Carl Jung knew that it is in precisely these moments of quiet surrender that the soul finds its voice. It is when you stop struggling that the soul speaks and reveals a path that you could not see before, a path that was hidden by the fog of your own mental chaos. You can call this an awakening of consciousness, an encounter with your own sacred shadow, or the birth of a new, more empowered self. The name does not matter. What matters is the experience itself. This silence is not a void to be filled, but a gateway to your inner self, the sacred sanctum where the true meaning and divine direction of your life reside. So, if you truly want to understand what is important to you, if you yearn to hear the truth of your own heart, do not immediately reach for the next activity or the next solution imposed by the outside world. Instead, have the courage to sit in the silence. Give yourself the gift of time to simply listen. Do not be afraid of this profound uncertainty. It is the sacred beginning of a deep and meaningful transformation. You see, true self-knowledge is born in the fertile ground of silence, and where true knowledge appears, true freedom is born. Freedom from illusions, freedom from the incessant noise of the world, and freedom from the false expectations you have placed upon yourself. It is there, in this apparent emptiness, that the greatest treasure of all lies waiting for you, your true, authentic, divine self. The moment you find yourself standing at a crossroads, unsure of what to do next, can indeed seem frightening and paralyzing. Uncertainty can feel like it is blowing your mind apart, forcing you into a spiral of doubt, fear, and a sense of utter helplessness. This is the ego's reaction to losing control. However, Carl Jung reminds us that it is precisely in such moments, when we feel the most lost, that a space for real, lasting transformation opens up before us. Uncertainty is not a sign of failure or the end of the road. It is a divine gateway to the birth of a new self. What at first glance appears to be chaos and a terrifying lack of control is, in fact, a crucial and sacred moment in the process of individuation, the journey of becoming fully and authentically oneself. Uncertainty is a signal from the universe that you have reached the limits of an old way of being, an old paradigm that no longer serves your soul's evolution. Your old patterns of thinking, the social roles you have played, and the internal beliefs that have defined your reality are beginning to dissolve. This process reveals a void, a space where there are no clear answers yet. For many people, this is a deeply uncomfortable, almost unbearable state. We often prefer to stick with the familiar, even if it is painful, rather than face this sacred void. Jung taught that it is our resistance to this uncertainty that inhibits our growth and causes us to repeat the same mistakes, to live out the same painful cycles over and over again. It is like trying to build a new, beautiful house on the crumbling ruins of an old one. Before we can start building something new and lasting, we must first allow the old structure to completely collapse. You do not have to answer the question, "What next?" right away. In our fast-paced Western culture, we are conditioned to value quick solutions and immediate results. But in the realm of the psyche, in the world of the soul, the process of change is slow, organic, and takes time. The emptiness you feel is not a lack of meaning, but a sacred space for a new quality of life to emerge. This is where true creativity and authentic being begin their gentle blossoming. Uncertainty, therefore, is a sign that you are on the verge of a profound transformation. It is a sign that the old you must be allowed to die so that the new, more authentic you can be born. In Jungian psychology, this process is absolutely crucial for mental health and spiritual development. Imagine a person who suddenly loses a significant part of their life, a job, a relationship, a long-held identity. Initially, they are plunged into fear, chaos, and confusion. Their world is turned upside down. But over time, as they sit with the discomfort and allow the dust to settle, they begin to see that this event has opened up new possibilities they never would have considered before. It is not the end of the road, but an invitation to a deeper reflection and a complete re-evaluation of their life. At such a moment, uncertainty becomes a wise teacher rather than a terrifying enemy. It allows you to see what is really important, what truly matters to your soul, and to begin building a life that is more in alignment with your inner self. This moment of uncertainty is also a moment when your subconscious begins to communicate more intensely with your conscious mind. This is when your dreams become more vivid, when synchronicities appear more frequently, when intuitive feelings arise that can point you in the direction of your growth. However, in order to hear these subtle messages, you must allow yourself to be silent and attentive. Uncertainty is an invitation to get in touch with yourself, not an excuse to escape from yourself. It is a sacred process of recognizing your fears, your shadows, and the ingrained patterns that have blocked your growth until now. Jung pointed out that uncertainty is also a sign that your soul is searching for authenticity. When your previous roles and masks cease to work, when they no longer feel true, you are left alone with the fundamental questions of meaning and purpose. This is the very moment when you can begin to listen to the voice of your inner truth, rather than the loud and often conflicting opinions of the outside world. This is where the journey of true individuation begins, the path to integrating the different aspects of yourself, from your shadow to your anima or animus, which in Jungian psychology are the keys to achieving inner wholeness and balance. A sense of uncertainty also unleashes the potential for deep spiritual growth. In many mystical traditions, it is precisely these moments of the dark night of the soul, these moments of confusion and lack of answers, that become the very beginning of a spiritual awakening. It is a time when you have to give up your previous certainties in order to open yourself up to something bigger, something invisible, something transcendent. Jung saw this process as a journey toward the very center of one's psyche, toward the self, which is the source of authentic power and inner harmony. Uncertainty, then, does not mean failure or being lost forever. It is the beginning of a sacred journey that can lead to true freedom and profound fulfillment. It is an invitation to let go of control and to embrace the unknown with an open heart and a deep sense of trust. Once you learn to feel comfortable with this state of not knowing, you will discover that life begins to fall into place on its own, often in ways you never expected, and in ways that are much more in line with your true nature. Ultimately, your uncertainty is a divine gift. It allows you to step outside the box of your old limitations, to recognize your own shadows, and to start creating your life anew. It is a space where courage, creativity, and true wisdom are born. So do not be afraid of this emptiness. It is not the end, but the sacred beginning of a new path that you can choose for yourself, in accordance with your deepest self. In Western culture, emptiness is most often associated with something negative, with lack, absence, a void that must be filled at all costs. We fear silence, empty spaces, moments when our mind goes quiet and we don't know what to think or feel next. This feeling of emptiness seems to us to be proof of inner weakness, a lack of ideas, motivation, or values. However, Carl Jung turns this perspective completely upside down and shows that an empty mind is not a problem at all, but a tremendous opportunity, a potential for something completely new. For Jung, emptiness is not a state of lack, but a sacred space where something can appear. It is like a blank page, waiting for someone to put the first words, shapes, or images on it. In the psyche, it is the moment when archetypes, symbols, and subconscious content can reveal themselves, appear in consciousness, and begin to create a new narrative of life. Instead of fighting emptiness, we need to open ourselves up to it, immerse ourselves in it, and learn to listen to what is invisible, unnamed, but palpably present intuition, an inner voice, subtle signs. Imagine an empty space. It could be a room without furniture, a blank sheet of paper, the silence before a storm. At first glance, it seems empty, worthless. However, when you allow yourself a moment of focus and calm, you will see that it holds enormous potential, the possibility of creating something new. This space is a source of creativity and transformation. It is where ideas are born and true wisdom is formed, because it is thanks to this space that the mind can calm down and begin to listen more deeply. The Western world often teaches us that we must constantly do something, think, keep ourselves busy in order to be valuable and productive. Silence and emptiness are associated with laziness and inefficiency. Jung, however, reminds us that without these moments of emptiness, there can be no true creativity or deep development. It is when the mind falls silent and does not fill the space with chaos that we can connect with the unconscious part of ourselves, with archetypes that carry universal truths and lead to a deep understanding of ourselves. Archetypes are universal patterns present in the collective unconscious mythical figures, symbols, and images that resonate with every human being, regardless of culture or time. When the empty mind ceases to be a battlefield between the past and the future, between fears and expectations, it gives space for these archetypes to come to light and help us understand our own psyche. It can be a hero, a sage, a shadow, or an animus. Each of them carries a message and energy necessary for further development. The inability to immerse oneself in this space and accept emptiness as valuable is often the source of many problems faced by modern humans: chronic stress, burnout, or feelings of alienation. By constantly filling our minds with stimuli and distractions, we lose touch with the deep wisdom hidden in silence. Jung encourages us to learn to pause regularly, meditate, listen to ourselves, and allow emptiness to act as a source of inspiration and guidance. Immersing yourself in emptiness is also an act of trust. It is a decision that you do not need to know all the answers here and now, that you can give up control and let life lead you down unknown paths. It is in this space that true freedom is born, freedom from expectations, pressures, and self-criticism. It is a moment when you can allow yourself to be authentic, unforced, to meet external standards. In practice, this can be achieved through various forms of mind and body work: meditation, introspection, conscious breathing, or contact with nature. All these methods help to quiet the mental noise, reduce tension, and open up space for inner guidance. It is when the mind is empty that we can hear the most valuable answers, those that come from the depths of our psyche, rather than from superficial impulses or external influences. So let an empty mind cease to be a problem for you and become a source of inspiration and creativity. Learn to see emptiness not as a lack, but as a gift, a space where a new quality, a new life, and a true understanding of yourself are born. In this silence, this emptiness, true wisdom and strength await you, which you can use for profound transformation and growth. In today's world of constant rush, information overload, and pressure to be efficient, modern man seems to be trapped in constant action. We work, we scroll through social media, we plan our next tasks, meetings, goals, all to avoid facing the terrifying, for many, inner emptiness. Carl Jung repeatedly warned that this obsession with constant activity is actually an escape from ourselves. It is a form of psychological defense which, instead of protecting us, increasingly distances us from true contact with our own soul and essence. The illusion of action lies in the fact that we think that movement and busyness will fill our inner space. Fill the emptiness that frightens us because it means lack of control, uncertainty, loneliness. Meanwhile, any action taken out of fear of silence and loneliness has no chance of bringing relief. On the contrary, it becomes a reason for even greater confusion. A mind that is constantly busy does not allow for reflection, does not give space to listen to oneself and one's true needs. Jung said that true transformation does not come from chasing goals or superficially filling time. The answers to the most important questions only appear when you stop forcing yourself to act and allow yourself to simply be. When you allow yourself silence, breath, and the freedom to do nothing, this resignation from constant activity is a moment of true courage, because you are confronting yourself, your fears, and what is uncomfortable and unpredictable. In practice, the illusion of action manifests itself in many ways. It can be mindless scrolling through social media, which seems to take up moment after moment, but does not provide any real relief. It can be excessive work which, instead of being a source of satisfaction, becomes a form of escape from oneself. Obsessively planning for the future, to protect us from uncertainty, but at the same time trapping us in a cycle of constantly controlling everything. All these activities are just a superficial attempt to fill a void that deep down cannot be filled by any activity. In reality, the emptiness we are so afraid to feel is not an enemy, but a friend and a teacher. It is a space where true presence and awareness are born. It is a place where we can meet ourselves without masks and illusions, see our true emotions and desires. Only when we stop acting out of fear can we begin to act out of genuine need, in accordance with the voice of our soul. Jung emphasizes that allowing ourselves to be, and not just to act, is an act of deep respect for ourselves. It is a renunciation of social and internal pressures that tell us that we must always be productive, always active, always up to date. In this silence and emptiness lies the possibility of true transformation, because then archetypes and symbols begin to speak to us, leading us towards wholeness. Escaping emptiness is therefore one of the main causes of modern confusion and a lack of a genuine sense of meaning. The more we try to cover it up with superficial actions, the further we move away from ourselves. True courage lies in stopping, letting go of the need for constant control, and allowing ourselves to experience silence, even if it seems difficult or frightening at first. That is why it is crucial to learn to distinguish between acting out of fear and acting out of need. The former is a never-ending chase that leads to burnout. The latter is conscious, present decisions that serve our inner truth and growth. Emptiness then ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a space where we can rediscover ourselves and build a life in harmony with our inner selves. It is therefore worth asking yourself, what really motivates me to act? Am I doing this to escape emptiness, or because it is something I really want to do? When you learn to listen to the answer to this question, you will open the door to true freedom and inner peace, something that no external activity can give you. When the noise of everyday life finally fades away and you pause for a moment, something you often fear begins to emerge in that moment of emptiness and silence. Your shadow. It is in this space, seemingly motionless and colorless emptiness, that all the hidden, repressed, or neglected aspects of your psyche appear. Fears you have suppressed, feelings of meaninglessness you have tried to drown out, old traumas that have been waiting to be healed for a long time. Carl Jung clearly pointed out that the shadow is not a problem, but a necessary step on the path to fuller self-knowledge and true freedom. The shadow is the part of our unconscious that hides everything we don't want to see or admit to ourselves. It can be aggression, shame, anger, but also neglected talents, potential, emotions, and desires. Ignoring the shadow will not make it disappear. On the contrary, it will increasingly influence our decisions and behavior, often sabotaging our path and relationships with other people. Jung taught that until you confront your own shadow, your choices will be underpinned by fear, ignorance, and projections, that is, the transfer of your own unconscious mental content onto others. Confronting your shadow is a turning point that may seem difficult and painful, but it is crucial for further development. It is then that you begin to distinguish between what is truly yours and what is merely an illusion imposed by fears, social expectations, or repressed emotions. It is the moment when you begin to consciously choose your path, rather than repeating patterns and reactions that have limited you until now. In practice, encountering your shadow means being ready to look into the darkest corners of your soul without judgment, without running away. This requires courage and patience, because the shadow can reveal not only our weaknesses but also our hidden desires and aspects that we have successfully suppressed in order not to feel threatened or rejected. Jung emphasized that only the integration of the shadow leads to psychological unity, that is to say, harmony between the conscious I and the unconscious content. This is not an easy or quick process. It requires a gradual, conscious immersion into oneself and acceptance of what emerges. Techniques such as dream analysis, symbol work, meditation, and therapy can be helpful in bringing the shadow to light and beginning to understand and ultimately integrate it. Jung argued that the shadow is like the shadow of a tree. It is always there, but only when the light falls at the right angle can we see it and learn from it. It is also important to understand that the shadow is not something to be rejected or destroyed. It is a part of us that holds enormous power and potential when consciously integrated. Ignoring it only leads to the repetition of destructive patterns and disappointments. But accepting and working with your shadow opens the way to deep authenticity and creativity. When you learn to recognize and accept your shadow, your decisions become more conscious and free from illusion. You begin to see which actions are genuine and which are merely attempts to escape or defend yourself. This is the moment when you cease to be a prisoner of your own fears and limitations and become the creator of your life. Jung said that the shadow is also a mirror. It shows us what we reject in ourselves, but often project onto other people. Confronting the shadow, therefore, helps to improve our relationships because we stop attacking or idealizing others and begin to see them as they really are, with their light and shadow. This is an important step on the path to true empathy and understanding. Finally, the key to moving forward is understanding that emptiness and shadow are inseparable. It is in emptiness, when all external stimuli fall silent, that the shadow comes to the surface. So we should not run away from emptiness, but learn to dwell in it and observe what emerges. This is where true transformation and maturation begin. In summary, the shadow reveals itself in emptiness as an inevitable and necessary stage of inner development. Accepting this fact and working on oneself allows one to break through inner limitations, regain authenticity, and follow one's own path with greater awareness and peace of mind. This is the key to the path ahead, which leads to wholeness and unity with oneself. In moments when you feel lost and don't know which way to go, it is natural to reach for reason, logic, calculations, and analyses. However, trying to find answers in your thoughts, arguments, and plans can lead to even greater confusion. Carl Jung reminds us that it is not reason that is the ultimate guide on the journey to our own soul, but intuition, a subtle, quiet, and deeply internal voice that does not shout or demand attention, but waits for you to hear it. It is our most faithful compass, the true answer when all else fails. Intuition is often underestimated and disregarded in Western culture, which values rationality and control. Jung, however, taught that intuition is direct access to the unconscious, to the deeper layers of our psyche, where the true sources of our wisdom and truth about ourselves lie. It is there, in the space between consciousness and unconsciousness, that a subtle signal appears to help us choose the right path. Recognizing and trusting intuition requires courage and practice. It is not easy, because the daily noise, other people's opinions, social expectations, our own fears and doubts drown out this quiet voice. Jung emphasized that in order to hear intuition, we must first remove this external and internal noise. This requires quieting the mind, stopping, and immersing yourself in silence. Meditation, observing your emotions, working with symbols and dreams are just some of the tools that can help you open up to this voice. Sometimes intuition comes as a hunch, an unexpected feeling in the body, a sudden flash of insight, or even a dream full of symbols. It is not always clear and unambiguous. It requires interpretation and trust, which often stands in opposition to our logical thinking. Jung warned that ignoring intuition in favor of cold calculation can lead to false decisions and a feeling of emptiness. The inner compass is not simply a tool for making everyday decisions, but the voice of the soul that leads to a fuller and more authentic life. It is through it that we discover our true desires, mission, and meaning of existence. It helps us recognize which paths are in line with our inner truth and which are merely the result of external pressures and illusions. When you learn to trust your intuition, you will begin to notice that the answers that appear in your life are more consistent, complete, and authentic. Instead of resorting to constant planning and control, you allow yourself spontaneity and openness, which bring true joy and satisfaction. Importantly, intuition does not exclude reason, it complements it. Jung pointed out that the best decisions are made when reason and intuition work together. Reason helps us understand, analyze, and implement what intuition tells us. But it is intuition that provides the initial impulse and points in a direction that cannot be found in dry facts and statistics. Trusting your intuition also requires accepting uncertainty and risk. Intuition does not guarantee success, but it shows you a path that is in line with your true nature. This is the essence of trust, allowing yourself to follow what is inside, even if the outside world does not understand or question it. In summary, recognizing your inner compass, which is your intuition, is a key step on the path to an authentic life and a deep understanding of yourself. It is the quiet voice of the soul that guides you through the darkness of uncertainty, showing you paths that your mind often fails to see. Only when you learn to listen to it and trust it does clarity emerge, and you feel that you are going exactly where you should be. In Western culture, which places a huge emphasis on action, productivity, and constantly achieving goals, the recommendation to do nothing may sound like heresy. In a world where success is measured by activity, speed, and efficiency, stopping and doing nothing seems like a waste of time or even a sign of weakness. However, Carl Jung, a master of depth psychology, pointed to another dimension of this apparent passivity, a profound, creative paradox that brings about real transformation and growth. Stopping, letting go, and resisting the inner need for control is not passivity, but a conscious act of opening up to something that transcends our conscious abilities. Jung noted that the greatest breakthroughs in the process of self-discovery and psychological development often come not when we try to force a solution or a result, but in moments of silence, stillness, and suspension. It is when we stop searching intensely that extraordinary things begin to happen. Paradoxically, when you stop fighting the lack of answers, synchronicities appear, phenomena that Jung defined as meaningful coincidences with deep symbolic meaning for your life. These are subtle signs that the universe sends to guide your consciousness and open new paths. Synchronicities do not appear when you push hard, but when you are ready to accept them, when you stop controlling and start letting go. When you let go, you create space for inner insights and inspiration to emerge. What was hidden under the pressure of action, under the weight of thoughts and fears, begins to reveal itself. In this space of silence, emptiness, and inactivity, your subconscious can freely communicate with your conscious mind, bringing deep understanding and clarity. Many of us experience moments in our lives when action ceases to bring results, and the pressure to achieve a goal only intensifies frustration and feelings of meaninglessness. Jung points out that the best remedy in such situations is to stop and accept what island. This is not a sign of failure, but of wisdom, the lesson that not everything has to be under our control, and that sometimes the best solutions come on their own when we allow them to emerge. Doing nothing does not mean that we become passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it is active listening, mindful presence, and deep openness to the invisible and unnamed. It is a practice of trusting our own inner wisdom and the rhythms of life, which are often more subtle than our rational expectations. Jung points out that doing nothing allows us to uncover layers of the psyche that are usually obscured by the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It is then that archetypes, symbols, and the deep contents of the unconscious reveal themselves, helping to transform old patterns and open up to a new quality of life. This is the moment when creativity and intuition gain space to act. From a spiritual perspective, this attitude is consistent with the wisdom of many traditions that teach that true strength and transformation come from acceptance and surrender to the natural processes of life. You don't have to constantly fight, strive, change. Sometimes it's enough to stop and trust that life will lead you where you need to be. On a practical level, the paradox of doing nothing can be introduced into everyday life through simple mindfulness exercises, meditation, long walks in silence, or moments of reflection without expectations. These are moments that create space for the voice of intuition and the subconscious to emerge and guide us forward. In summary, the paradoxical power of do nothing is not a denial of action, but an invitation to a deeper cooperation with yourself and the world. It is the art of allowing what is to be, with the confidence that in silence and stillness, the answers you are looking for will appear. It is a lesson that sometimes the biggest changes begin not when you push your way forward, but when you dare to let go and see what happens. The modern world bombards us with a barrage of questions, expectations, and the need to make decisions. One of the most frequently asked questions is, "What should I do?" As if the answer were the key to solving all problems, removing chaos, and finding a clear path. However, Carl Jung, a profound expert on the human psyche and spirituality, pointed to something fundamentally different. He claimed that the question, "What should I do?" is very often not a cry of reason, but of the soul. An inner voice that does not seek quick solutions but desires something much more important: contact, presence, and attention. The soul does not need immediate answers or action plans. What it wants is to be noticed, heard, and taken into account. It wants you to stop living on autopilot, following other people's scripts and social expectations, and finally start listening to your own authentic voice. The time of emptiness, which for many is painful and frightening, is in fact a valuable call, an invitation to return to yourself, to your true nature. This space of silence and inactivity, which at first glance seems like emptiness and lack, is in fact the foundation on which you can rebuild contact with what is most important. It is a time when the masks of social roles, habits, and external directives cease to function, and you have the opportunity to meet yourself in your most primal and honest form. Jung taught that real life and real change begin with this authentic relationship with your own soul. It is not a path through rigid plans or analyses, but through openness, mindfulness, and the courage to accept what arises within you, both the light and the shadow. Only when you go beyond superficial questions and start to connect with your inner self will answers with deeper meaning emerge. According to Jung, the soul is more than just emotions or feelings. It is the unconscious but living part of our psyche that wants to be understood and integrated into our everyday lives. It is a source of intuition, wisdom, and creativity. When you are in touch with your soul, you no longer need to constantly seek external solutions or drown in a chaos of thoughts. This inner connection gives you a sense of peace, confidence, and guidance. So stop looking for ready-made answers. Start looking for contact with yourself, with your heart and your body. Immerse yourself in silence, in the present moment, in what you really feel, not what you should feel. Allow yourself to breathe, to be, to observe without judgment. This is the moment when your soul can begin to reveal itself and guide you on your own, unique path. In practice, this may mean a change in your approach to life. Less pressure for quick solutions and more space for reflection and feeling. Less chasing after results and more mindfulness of what is happening here and now. You can start keeping a journal of your feelings and thoughts, meditate, take walks alone, listening to your inner needs. Time of emptiness, although often perceived as a moment of loss or uncertainty, is in fact a moment of transformation. It is a call to return to your center, to what is most true and valuable in you. It is not about finding a solution outside. but about creating a space where true contact with yourself can emerge. And that is what matters most. Finally, it is worth remembering that the soul never stops calling, even if its voice is quiet and gentle. It is this voice that guides us through darkness and uncertainty, showing us a path that cannot be found through logical thinking or social pressure. Contact with the soul is the deepest answer you need to find your true self and start living in harmony with your inner world. In moments of uncertainty and confusion, it is easy to look outside and blame the world, circumstances, other people, or difficult situations. If I had better conditions, I would be happy, is a common narrative that allows us to avoid responsibility and explain our own limitations. Carl Jung, however, pointed to a deeper dimension of the problem, which lies not in the external world, but within ourselves. It is not the world that blocks us, but our unconscious fears, internal conflicts, and divisions that keep us stuck. Jung explained that every difficulty that arises in our lives has its source in the psyche, especially in those aspects that remain hidden from our consciousness. These unconscious fragments are often fears that have been suppressed, rejected, or repressed because they seem too painful or difficult to accept. It is these fears that create the internal barriers we call blocks. At a deeper level of the psyche, there is a conflict between what our soul desires, an authentic, full life in harmony with our deepest needs, and what society, family, and culture have taught us. We often learn to suppress our true desires and submit to external expectations. This gives rise to a conflict that paralyzes our decisions and actions. Unconscious fears can take many forms, from fear of rejection, failure, and loneliness, to fear of our own power and freedom. Each of these fears acts as a silent guard that blocks access to true strength and creativity. As a result, we begin to believe that the world is hostile, that it limits us, when, in fact, we are building an invisible prison around ourselves. Jung emphasized that true freedom can only be achieved when we decide to look deep within ourselves and confront this inner conflict. This is not easy, as it requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to accept our own shadows, those parts of ourselves that have been hidden until now. It is the confrontation with the shadow, with what is rejected or forgotten within us, that opens up space for transformation. Instead of running away from your fears or blaming others, it is worth starting to observe your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. What patterns repeat themselves in your life? What causes you strong resistance or anxiety? These are the places that are key to understanding what is really blocking you. When you look at them without judgment, you will see that they are not bad parts of you, but rather wounds or hurt aspects that want to heal. This understanding gives you freedom and the power to choose. You can start making conscious decisions instead of reacting automatically. You have the opportunity to choose a path that is in line with your true nature, rather than the fears imposed on you by your environment. Jung taught that each of us is responsible for our own path, and that only through an authentic encounter with ourselves can we find fulfillment. In practice, this may mean working with your shadow through therapy, meditation, or conscious reflection. The more you are able to accept your fears and weaknesses, the more control you gain over your life. You cease to be a victim of circumstances and become the creator of your own reality. Ultimately, what seemed like an insurmountable obstacle becomes a bridge to deeper awareness and power. It is at this moment that the real choice appears, not a choice between action and inaction, but a choice between living in fear and living in authenticity and freedom. The modern world is full of stimuli, information, and external sources that promise to provide us with answers to questions about the meaning of life, the direction we should take, or true happiness. Social media, psychological advice, coaches, philosophies, everything seems to say, look there, you will find the answer to your questions. However, Carl Jung warned against this trap. The real answers never come from outside. They are already within us, in our depths, in our souls. The problem is that most people have never learned how to look for them. Jung emphasized that in moments of confusion and lack of clarity, there is nothing more valuable than silence and presence within oneself. Instead of getting even more distracted, chasing the next impulse, the next trend, the next piece of advice. It is worth stopping and turning your attention inward. What we really need is not more noise, but the calm that allows us to hear ourselves. When you don't know what to do, Jung advised, sit quietly, breathe deeply, feel your body and your heart. This is an invitation to mindfulness, to be in touch with your inner self, not just the outside world. In our daily rush, we often ignore the signals our body and soul give us: fatigue, anxiety, a longing for something deeper. These are our truest guides. The most important question you can ask yourself is, what does my soul need now? Not in a month, not in an ideal future, not when all conditions are perfect, but now, at this moment. This question changes your entire approach. It shifts the focus from the future, which is illusory, to the present, which is the only real space of life. The answer to this question is always available, but it only appears when we stop looking for it outside ourselves, when all external voices fall silent and we are able to listen to our inner voice. Jung pointed out that it is in silence that true wisdom, intuition, and authentic understanding are born. The inner light is always present, but it needs space to shine. In practice, this means not only a moment of meditation or peace, but above all a change in your approach to life. You stop being dependent on the opinions of others, on external circumstances, and you start trusting yourself, your body, heart, and soul. This is the beginning of true independence and spiritual maturity. Importantly, this question and its answer are not the end of the road, but the beginning. It's like diving into the source from which your authentic power flows. When you start listening to yourself, you will begin to notice small signs. Synchronicities will appear, and your decisions will become more and more in line with your true nature. By stopping looking outside yourself, you regain your freedom. Freedom from pressure, from comparisons, from the constant pursuit of what is not yours. It is then that you begin to live in harmony with yourself, and your life becomes fuller, more authentic, and more satisfying. In summary, Jung pointed out that the only truly necessary thing you need to do is to stop running after answers outside yourself and start listening to your soul in silence, in mindfulness, in presence. There inside is everything you are looking for.